Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. And I don't know how many times I've shot this exact episode in the past, but it's done. It's actually done. And I'm talking about Rival Rails, my two-player train game. Play tested it last week. Tried a new round tracking system. That's the one thing that I've been holding, like, I didn't like, was how the rounds were tracked, because it meant that there was 3 tracks and one of them was just every turn or whatever ticking it was awkward, and it was just too much for a simple game. It was too much. And so I tried a new round tracking mechanism. If you've played train games, the previous round mechanism was triggered when you make a connection to a city. So in a train game, when you bring a new railroad into a city, that typically does something. Like, it gives you a payout of some kind, increases the share values of some kind, something along those lines. For the longest time in this game, it just gave you like a flat fee payout. Then I changed it to giving like a sliding, like an increasing payout based on the length, whatever. It was all connection driven. And so that was also the round trigger, which meant that I had to move. I made a connection, so I moved a thing here, and I got some money for that, and then I moved a thing here. But if I made 2 on my turn, I had to move this and get that money and move that, and then this moved twice. It was a complete cluster, and I didn't like it. Threw it away. It's now just based on the company shares that you play each turn. So you play a certificate, you put some trains out, you move the marker, you get that much cash, that's it. Way, way better. Because so it worked out perfectly, and based on that play test, I changed a couple of the card powers. So part of the thing about 2-player that I don't like with traditional train games is a thing called share mirroring. So in a traditional train game, you choose one of the companies, you buy a share for that company, you put trains out. Some of them, the money that you spent is the money that you're allowed to use to put trains out. Some of them, you just get a generic number of points you can put out, whatever. But everything is available, and it's up to you to manipulate the market. Well, in a 3 or more player game, that's fine, because you're trying to do what's best for you. That's also not helping your opponents. You're trying to gain more benefit for yourself. In a 2-player game, it breaks down because I take this company. What happens if you just do the same exact thing? All we're doing is chasing the end game to hope that I have a couple more dollars than you because that one time I got a slightly better payout or whatever. And it's not fun. But I wanted to have that taking shares and doing things feel to the game. And I think I achieved that. The other thing that would happen in a 2-player game is there's typically at the end of a round or the end of when a train makes a connection to a certain city, that kind of thing, there's usually a dividends payout. So the shareholders get dividends. And it's based majority and minority. So whoever has the majority gets a payout, whoever has the minority. Well, in a 2-player game, if I'm nobody's getting anything. Even if you do, it's just kind of this awkward, like, here, you get $100 and I get 50. Why? Like, you should have just got $100, or you should have just got $50. And so I wanted to keep all of that feeling in the game. And the way that I came up with to deal with majority and minority shares, first of all, I disconnected payouts from the companies that you use. I didn't, but I did. And you'd have to see the game working to understand that. But so playing off of your opponent's, whatever your opponent's choosing, is probably a bad idea. It's not going to help you as much as you think. It's always better to focus on your own particular companies. Whatever you started off with, it's probably better to focus on that if you can keep getting those cards in your hand. So I wanted to have some form of majority payout. And what I came up with was these special powers. So there's contracts. If you have the majority in a company, you earn a contract for your business. This isn't like you're a train company. You're just a conglomerate. And so if you have the majority in this company, you get a contract based on that company, right? So there's a couple for each. and it works really well. So what I did after this last play test, I found a couple of those they still weren't working quite the way I liked. Tweaked them a little bit, brought them hopefully more in line power level wise, and then that's it. It's done. Like it's officially done. I think there's the last thing that I could maybe play with if I really wanted to in the future is the round ends. Like right now they trigger on just gut feeling. I felt like these spaces were the best. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it would be better to have it play some other way. But for now, that's it. I'm not. Part of the reason is I'm done working on it, and I'll tell you why here in a second. The other reason is at the end of this week, the Game Crafter is upping their prices on everything by like 30 to 40%, because their sourcing is pricing has gone up for materials. Their labor costs have gone up. Like the world is burning right now financially, and they're not going to be able to absorb that hit. So their pricing is going up. So I wanted to order it this week, and I ordered it with a box. It's their least expensive prototype box, but it's fully printed, so it'll look nice on my shelf. I have a copy of my game on my shelf. Nobody else will have it, probably ever, because I'm going to tell you what happened during that playtest. In the back of my mind, this game needs like a couple of hundred trains to make it work. You need 40 to 50 of each color, and there's 5 colors. That's a lot, right? For a 2-player game, that's a lot. And I've been trying to figure out how to reduce that number to make it work and keep the feel. And I haven't come up with a clear solution. I talked to a small publisher who we discussed, how about abstracting the board out of the equation so you don't need all of this stuff. Figure out a way to abstract that out. Don't like that. I don't want that. I want you to still be I want you to be building routes. That, to me, is the game. There's this commodity market that I came up with, which is phenomenal. Like, it is the thing that drives the economy of the game. And in order to manipulate that market, you need to be able to put trains on the board to manipulate what you connect to, right? So you connect to a city that is strong in, say, coal, you're going to get coal shares, and that's the real thing that's paying out here. So I want the board. I've also been thinking about, is there a way for me to reduce the number of trains being used? Could I make different pieces? Like, could I use an old school, like Railways of the World or Railroad Tycoon? They use these tiles that had the things printed on them, and so you just pick the correct shaped tile and put it down. That could work. I think that in a 2-player game, it might even be more expensive than the wooden bits, and it's still this fiddly, over the top thing. But then this last playtest, as we're working through it, it's working really well. I'm really happy with it. It is the best version of that game that I've done so far. And I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm happy with. But the playtester, my friend Jeff, he suggested at one point, he's like, now that you've done this, have you thought about just throwing the round structure away completely? And I went, what? And he's like, what if every time a company hits this point, there's a payout for that company? And I went, oh yeah, that's way better. Like, it's a way better game. And in so many different ways. Because of the market manipulation, there are some times when you can really get screwed because you made a good move, and then your opponent makes a better play that ends the round, really brings the market, valuation on their side, and they get a huge payout and you get nothing. And throwing the round structure away and paying out on a per company, per market basis is a way better game. Guarantee it. And so also in the back of my mind this whole time, I've been thinking about, could I make this map like tiny? Like right now, you can play up to 5 points worth of trains. So you're going to play 3, 4, or 5 points. What if I just cut it down to 1, 2, or 3 points, and I make the map half the size? Like I think it's currently a 6 or a 12 by 18. What if I make it a 6 by 9 map? So it's this little tiny map, very tight moves. I think it's going to be a much better game. I think that version 2, what I'm going to call version 2, or maybe I'll call it, micro rival rails or tiny rival rails or tiny epic rival rails or something, I think it's going to be a much better experience. And so I'm excited to work on it. I'm excited to try again, basically take the same basic ideas. Because there won't be any round structure, I don't know if the contract thing is going to work out at all. Maybe I'll figure out a way to put that in. But I think it's going to be a better game completely, like just all down the marks. We'll see. We'll see if I get it to work. It's going to take a decent amount of effort to try to really shrink that board and make it still play well. Because one of the things that works really well with the bigger board is, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 turns down the road, you still have lots of options. Whereas with a tiny board, you're not going to have a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of stepping over things to try to get somewhere, and it's not going to be nearly as exciting. But I think I can figure out a way to make the board play more impactful. Right now, there's little impacts. There's little things that you can do to kind of screw your opponent on the board, but they're very small. Other than stealing a connection or stealing a play, the way that you put your trains out has very little impact on your opponent. There are a couple of spots on the board where you can make a play that really screws them, but those are few and far between. I think with the smaller map, there's a lot more potential for doing some screw you plays, and I think that's fun. So we'll see. I think I'm going to have a better version of the game, but for now, version 1, that's it. It's done. I need to write the rules, but it's done. Famous last words, because I've said that, I think this is the 4th video now where I've said it's done, but it's done. So when it comes in the middle of December, I'll get to show it to you and say, here it is. This is the official Rival Rails finished version. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know sounds smart is omnivore. It is a noun meaning an animal that eats both plants and other animals. I ordered delicious steak salad with crumbled blue cheese, an omnivore's delight. Omnivore. O-M-N-I-V-O-R-E. I would agree. I used to eat steak salads a lot when I worked at this car dealership in the town north of me. And I don't know where we got them from. Somebody ordered them. They were phenomenal. Steak salads with blue cheese, dressing, and french fries on it. They were so good.